Preparing for the bench exam can be quite nerve-wracking, especially because there are so many things to consider and you really have to do a good job to pass this exam. So if you want to hear my tips and tricks on how you can master your cavity preparations, then keep on watching. So it's this time of the year, guys, where everyone usually hears back from universities, and I just hope as many of you as possible got invited to some bench exams. And if this is the case, great, congratulations, you are amazing. The thing is that there's quite a bit of work that you have to do now, and I wish I would have recorded this video a little bit earlier just so that you guys could have prepared for it sooner, but this video might help you for future sessions. I'm gonna make this a two-part video series. I'm just gonna go through the most important things that you have to consider when you prep for the bench exam. In this video, we will talk about the Class 2 cavity preparation. A Class 2 cavity is not as easy as you might think, especially if you haven't practiced that in your dental school. Your preparation time should be anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Me personally, I practiced for a month for a bench exam that I had at VCU, but I would definitely recommend to practice a little bit longer. It is not easy to create a perfect Class 2 cavity, and dental schools know that very well. Before we get started, make sure that you have your equipment and your instruments right. I made a video about what burrs, what hand instruments, and also the compressor that I use. All those things will be very helpful for you to create a perfect Class 2. So I made a list of things that are very important to get a high score in your bench exam, and the most important things that dental schools look at when they examine your preparations. So here we can see a typical Class 2 preparation with the occlusal part, obviously, with the proximal box. So there's many ways how you can start preparing this cavity. I'm just gonna tell you how I usually do it, and then I'm gonna go through all the things that are important to consider. So usually I start with a 330 burr, and I do an occlusal punch cut, just so that I reach my initial 1.5 millimeters. And as you might know, the cavity has to be 1.5 till 3 millimeters in depth in the occlusal part. And then I just move mesially and distally along the fissure, trying to leave the cusps intact, obviously. I then slowly advance a little bit buccally with the burr, holding my burr parallel to the long axis of the tooth. And when you look at the burr, you will see that it's conically shaped, meaning when you prepare the buccal wall and the lingual wall right here, your walls will be inclined automatically, and this is what we want. So we basically want to have an amalgam preparation, okay? So we do want to see converging walls, which you can see here in this picture. And once your occlusal part is done, you can continue with the proximal box. For that, I use a different burr, the 245 burr, which is 3 millimeters in length. It has the same shape as the 330 burr, it's just longer. So for the proximal box, I usually start with the 330 and I just go a little bit deeper until I have a slit. I form like a slit cut. Then I switch to the 245 burr and I try to insert it all the way. And then I move from buccal to lingual, and go deeper till I have my 3 millimeters. I also make sure that I extend it far enough on the mesial and lingual side. And then the distal part of the box, you should definitely leave some tooth structure on that side, just so you don't damage the adjacent tooth. You will be able to remove that little bit of tooth structure that is left with an enamel hatchet. So I try not to go too close to the adjacent tooth with my burr. You know, hand instruments will be your best friend for sure to prevent damage. You will use your enamel hatchet and you will straighten out the buccal wall and the lingual wall, and you will see in a minute why. You can also move back and forth with the enamel hatchet on the floor, on the gingival floor of the proximal box, to make this as straight as possible as well. After you're done with the hand instrument, you might use your 330 burr again at a very low speed to smoothen out the walls. So this is always my last thing that I do. I smoothen out the walls and make sure that there is no uneven parts. So that's basically how I prepare my cavities. Next, we'll just see what schools really want to see in this cavity preparation. The very first thing, we're gonna talk about the axis of the cavity, meaning that instruments that you use should easily access this cavity. When you, use amalgam, you will have to compress that amalgam into the cavity with your condensers, and those have usually a diameter of about 1 millimeter. So it should be wide enough in those areas for the instrument to be inserted. So it's ideal if the outline is smooth and it follows the occlusal anatomy. So as I said, you will use your burr and you will follow the fissure in a smooth way. We don't want to see any cut off or straight angles, margins in this area. Then the isthmus width has to be 1 to 1.5 millimeters. What is the isthmus? The isthmus is the area where the occlusal part and the proximal part of the cavity connect. So it's right here, okay? It should be 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters, and this is again for the instrument or the condenser to be inserted here and to compress the amalgam properly. Next is the depth. The pulpal depth should be 1.5 to 2 millimeters. That's why we use our 330 burr, which is exactly 1.5 millimeters. And then the gingival floor, so the floor of the proximal box, the gingival floor has to be 1 to 1.25 millimeters. It shouldn't be too narrow, it shouldn't be too big either. Otherwise, you will get really close to the pulp if you make it too wide. If you make it too narrow, the instrument won't be able to insert the amalgam properly into this proximal box. The next thing is the clearance. We want to open the proximal contacts, meaning this area right here, right next to the adjacent tooth, has to be opened up enough so that the teeth are not in contact anymore. The contact has to be replaced by the amalgam later on, okay? We don't want any tooth structure in the contact area. That's why, so this buccal wall and this lingual wall have to be extended wide enough. They want to see the gingiva, meaning when you look at the cavity occlusally, you will see the pink gingiva in between the teeth, okay? The tip of the explorer should pass. So if you use the explorer, you'll be able to pass between the two teeth. Good. Next thing is the retention form. Retention form is what I meant when I was talking about the converging walls of the cavity. And in the proximal box, the walls should also be converging. So that's what we want to achieve in the occlusal and in the proximal part. Next thing is the cavo surface margin, the wall surfaces and the transitions. We need 90-degree cavo surface margins, which is typical for an amalgam preparation. There should be no unsupported enamel, meaning if you have some overhangs, make sure to remove them with your burr whenever you smooth out the cavity margins at the end. And again, smooth walls and have gentle transitions, especially the transition here between the proximal box and the occlusal part of the cavity. Especially that isthmus area should be smooth. The adjacent tooth, as I have said multiple times, there should be no damage to the adjacent tooth. Make sure that you use your hand instruments once you get close to the adjacent tooth, and once your remaining wall that you have, if it's thin enough to break off with the enamel hatchet, then definitely do it. Don't go too far with your burr, otherwise you will, create some damage. And this actually is a reason why many people fail the bench exam. Okay, so you don't want to do this. Be smart and use your hand instruments. So here's just a picture which, you insert your 330 burr, and this is your proximal box. You insert it all the way straight till you have your 3 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters if you're on the occlusal part. And then you just move it buccally till you have this converging wall right here. And then you move it lingually till you have this wall, which should also be a little bit more converging. And as soon as you're ready with that, you can move on to using your hand instruments to create straight 90-degree angles for this lingual wall and also for the buccal wall. You can just shave off those enamel spikes or whatever you have left here. You can shave it off with a hatchet, and then you can also polish the floor here on the proximal box to make it as straight as possible. Now we should talk about how your cavity should not look like, and this is a good example that they started the proximal part of the cavity, but they didn't really get to the occlusal part yet. But I think we can already say quite a bit of that proximal part. So those are those enamel spikes that I'm talking about. So if you use a circular burr, like a 330 burr or a 245, they're circular in diameter, right? So they will obviously create those little spikes right here, which we do not want. We have to remove those. And with a round burr, it will be almost impossible for you to remove those. So what you will do is you will use that enamel hatchet, which is straight, right? So this enamel hatchet will be able to cut those enamel spikes off, right, like here and right here. So you will have, maybe that's a little too extreme, but you know what I mean. You will be able to cut off those spikes and you will be able to have straight walls of your proximal box. Also, you can see that this person probably tried to do a punch cut, which went too deep. We should go deep enough for sure to see the gingiva right here, which it would be enough just to see that much. So the thing that you can do here, if you went too deep in this one part, you can try to remove this part and this part a little more, straighten that out a little more, and just hope for the best. So go slow and make sure you hold your hands steady. Don't overdo it, because then you end up with a situation like this. Also, this wall of the proximal box right here should be straight, which can't really tell how far they already went in this cavity, but yeah. Okay, this is a very good looking class 2 preparation. As you see, the occlusal part is smooth and there are no sharp angles, no sharp edges. Here you can see the gingival part, and you're very likely able to pass with the Explorer for here. The floor looks pretty smooth to me. The isthmus area is more than 1 to 1.5 millimeters, which is good. The walls right here are straight. This person very likely used an enamel hatchet. I'm proud of this person, whoever that was. And as you can see, the adjacent tooth looks unharmed. So all in all, this is a very good cavity. I can't tell how deep it is, but it looks, deep enough for me. So the cavity width is not too extreme either. It's a good size. That's another very good cavity, both of them. They look really good. Here we can see that the walls are straight. It's deep enough. The gingiva is visible right here. The proximal box looks smooth. The occlusal part of the cavity is smooth as well, as you can see. And it looks deep enough for sure. Here this occlusal part looks very good as well. So try to accomplish something like this. Don't extend the occlusal part too much, like don't go up till here, that's too wide. We don't want a big cavity like that, because that hurts the integrity of the cusp tips, and we don't want to do that. So yeah, that's basically everything about a class 2 preparation. In my next video, I will talk about the crown preparations that we have to do in our bench exams. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you soon. Bye.